Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where stronger than retail sales makes some think that the Fed has enough wiggle room to not raise rates. Are they right? Pete and I will answer that question on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang.
It is official.
Right. Well, welcome back, folks. He is, of course, Pete Najarian, and I'm sure he's going to be bragging to us about his Monday night pick. But before we get to that, we're going to start off with macro, minute, fantastic futures, and several stocks. So let's get started. The macro is just what I said in the cold open, stronger than expected performance in the retail sector. August sales rising by about 0.6 month over month. That's better than the 0.2 increase and matching July's revised growth rate. So, Pete, that's my macro.
And I'll tell you what, I think you're exactly right, John. Also, let's acknowledge the fact that we do have the Fed in front of us. And I think the big thing that's going to happen, obviously, still looking towards tomorrow is, well, what does Powell have to say with Q&A? I think a lot of us have some pretty good sense of where the markets are going to be and what's going to occur. But what will he have to say with the Q&A? I think that's going to be the spot that really helps us out as far as what does it look like in terms of rate cuts into the future and all the rest of that. But those retail numbers, John, you and I have been talking about this for I don't know how long, but when I go out to dinner, it's packed. When I go to this place, it's packed. And yet everybody is out there telling us about, well, people aren't spending money. Yeah, the retail sales are really looking not that great. Well, sure looks like they actually turned out to be pretty damn good.
Well, as far as fantastic futures, Pete, I'm going to say keep your eye on crude oil because last week at this time it was under 62. Today, US WTI West Texas Intermediate is higher by almost 2%. 64.44 is what I got for a reading right now, Pete. And one of the reasons is Russian oil output has experienced a modest decline because of the attacks from Kiev and elsewhere in Ukraine on the Russian facilities. So with less product, prices go up because it's supply and demand, right, Pete?
Absolutely it is. Yeah, you're right. And I think it's a good one to point out. I'd also like to just say, we've been all over this. We continue to stay on this, and we've seen so much GLD and so forth in terms of unusual options. But how about the move that we just keep on getting with that Burl Ives, the silver and gold, John? I mean, it's unbelievable how well they have traded. Now, popped up a little bit today, pulled back a little bit today, but nonetheless, we're talking about gold being up 43% year to date, 11% in the last month. Silver about the same thing, up 49% in the year to date and 15% in the last month, both hitting new highs. So interesting to watch how that's playing out. And where does it stop? I don't know, because it seems like every day they go to the next level higher. We'll see if anything changes with all that's going on with the Fed, though.
When the Fed makes the cut, Pete, we're going to see Bitcoin and gold go higher. That's my prediction.
Yep.
And they'll make that cut tomorrow, folks. All right. Oracle, Pete, they are in the sweet spot, many of us would say, for a whole bunch of reasons. A, cloud. B, AI. And now they're part of a consortium, Pete, that is aimed at facilitating TikTok's operations in the US. And that means that TikTok will not be banned if indeed they have a consortium of US owners for it, including some Chinese. They just don't want the Chinese to have the majority share of TikTok in the US. So Oracle getting a little lift for this from this news today, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely it is, John. I mean, the good news for Oracle just keeps on coming, right? I mean, Larry Ellison and the numbers are just mind-boggling to see how wealthy, and, how about the fact that he does own 40%? I mean, the guy has done a lot of things right. And one of the things that they stumbled on for a while, but they finally crossed that over, John, was this whole thing with cloud, right? I mean, that's where their strength they needed that to happen. It has happened. They were able to identify exactly what they needed to do. How about a stock that's up 87%? Oracle. Now, we're not talking about some crazy AI company that just came out with an IPO. We're talking about Oracle. It's been around for a little while. 87% year to date, up 25% just in the last month. I mean,
Wow.
it's unbelievable. Is it a little bit stretched if you look at the PE? I would say yes, but it's stretched for the right reasons. They are absolutely crushing it, John. And because of that, I think even though it's trading at, call it, levels that they haven't seen in a while, this is a company with a PE of, call the forward, around 44, something like that. I think because of what they're doing, and the latest thing being this TikTok and the cloud deal that they're going to do there, I think that's actually something that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like NVIDIA, where sometimes, if you're growing as fast as they're showing us, then I think that's pretty damn good.
Well, let me ask you this question, pose this to you, Pete, as well as the viewers and listeners. Webtoon, WBTN, the stock is exploding higher. We talked about it at least a week ago, Pete, that there were rumors that they were going to do a deal with Disney, a partnership that would let Webtoon develop digital platform for featuring 35,000 Disney comics, including Marvel, Star Wars, and 20th Century Studios. Let me ask you this, Pete. I can remember back in the day when Disney had an animation studio and wouldn't have needed a digital helper, if you will, that's going to take, they're going to get a 2% stake in Webtoon, Pete. Disney is a 2% stake. They can't make digital movies on their own of these comics. Are you kidding me?
Maybe it's a values perspective, though, John. Maybe it's so inexpensive for what they would have to do to build it out the right way or whatever, or to want to go there. I totally understand what you're asking, though, and it is strange. I mean, the platform for verticals and traditional formats and all the rest of it. How about the volumes trading in there today, John? They had 5x volume in the first hour of trade. So it hit 52-week highs, got up over $20. I mean, there's a lot of good things that you could say right now for what's going on with Webtoon. I don't think it's as big a deal, though, John. I get what you're saying as far as Disney. Why couldn't they just do this on their own? They probably could, but I think they're just taking the easy route. And they're basically saying, all right, the 35,000 comics you're talking about, how are we going to do this? Well, this platform's ready to roll right now, rather than Disney having to maybe do all sorts of structuring. That's the only thing that would make sense. Otherwise, to your point, what are they doing?
Yeah. Again, I think the lack of focus by Iger here is just amazing, Pete, because you're handed one of the biggest brands in the world, and then first you go woke with it, then you leave, then you come back, and now you've got to basically outsource digital comics to a $2.5 billion company. Yeah. Okay, let's see how this plays out. How about Ferguson Enterprises, Pete? Symbol FERG, F-E-R-G. Now, these guys are a value-added distributor for basically residential and non-residential construction market in the U.S. They're a big company. I mean, $24-25 billion company. Shares were up 9% for a while today after their plumbing and HVAC distributor reported better than expected fiscal fourth quarter earnings. That's a good thing. Kind of surprising, because I guess not as much new construction, I would think, Pete, as perhaps some of the plumbing and HVAC is going on where people are fixing things, because we all know with rates as high as they were, people weren't buying homes as much as they used to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting one, John. I mean, it doesn't sound very sexy when you say, well, what do they do? Well, they're kind of plumbing and HVAC and whatever else. And you go, well, I'm not that interested in that. Well, you might want to be interested in it because, like you said, it's up 8 or 9% because of what they were able to deliver. What did they deliver? Well, I don't know. Revenue was up 6.9%. $8.5 billion year over year. That seems like a pretty nice number. But how about their earnings? Their earnings jumped 59%. They came in at 348. They were looking for 301 as far as the earnings itself. Gross margins were up and they're up towards 31.7%. So when you look at some of these numbers and start piecing them together, this is a pretty damn good quarter. And I think they've done pretty well coming into this. What they want to do with some of what the money that they've been able to put away with this is they want to get even more growth. So I think they're in the right spot right now. And to your point, it wasn't a whole lot of building out there, but there was enough apparently, because these guys certainly had about as good a quarter as they could have. I mean, this is an impressive set of numbers that they were able to put out there. And it's a company that, quite frankly, John, I'm not a guy who's going to lie about it. I don't follow Ferguson. I never heard of Ferguson, but they're doing things right, and it's a damn impressive quarter.
Yeah, and it's not small potatoes, folks. When you're 20 some odd $billion company, it's a real deal. All right, Pete, Rocket Lab. I'm going to say this is a teachable moment. Why? Because we had unusual option activity in RKLB, and it was back on the 8th. Here it is, 8 days later. The stock was 50 when they had that unusual activity, but if you look at the chart on there, you'll see it popped to over $54 a share. Now, when you've got earnings coming out, folks, and you've got a nice pop like that, some of us are tempted to let it ride, let it go. Wrong. That is not what you should do. So if I were in your shoes, folks, and you were following our work for this unusual activity, and it popped $4, as you saw, it was 50 on the entry, and then it went up to 54 and change, you got to take some off the table.
Yep.
And if you would have taken 50% off the table when it reversed and went right back down to 50 or 49, wherever it is today, you wouldn't be blown out. You'd say, well, I still have some that I can sell here, and I already took off my whole investment on the big pop. That's being a disciplined trader. This is exactly the kind of thing that Pete and I are going to be talking about at Aventura, Florida, Grant Cardone's headquarters, when we're talking about live trading on Friday, the 19th. That's this week, folks, and Saturday, strategy and so forth. So please, even if you can't buy the virtual pass, which gives you a $200 credit on anything you want to buy on Market Rebellion's website. But even if you can't buy that, at least sort of think positively about always pulling money off the table when you're right and cutting losses when you're wrong. It's why Pete and I have been at this for a combined, 75 years, Pete.
Something close to that, John. Don't say it ever again, though. It's too late. This is what we call DDA. And what is that? Well, discipline dictates action. You get a stock that spikes, like you just said, John. Yeah, you got to take some off. Maybe you take 50% off. Now you've got all the money that you put into the trade off, and now you can decide, okay, well, what do we want to do now? And it gives you that opportunity, because markets do move around pretty substantially. By the way, off of the lows, John, I think it was back in April, this is a stock in the last 6 months. It's only up 180%. So it's got a little bit of volatility to it as well, which makes you start to have to be that much more attentive to what's going on. By the way, another thing that I think gave it a little bit of a squeeze might have been the short interest here, John, about 12% on this one, at least early on. So they got squeezed, and then all of a sudden it pulled right back again. So interesting to watch how this thing all played out. They're raising some capital with some flexibility. That's one of the things that I think gave them that pop. But this is a stock not too far off those $55 level of the highs, John. But interesting to see how it's been shifting around. I as you said, interesting, but you've got to be disciplined. And when you see that UOA that was part of this whole thing, it makes even more sense. You've got to take some off.
Absolutely. Well, we've got video again today, Pete. And we had so many videos, I didn't know which one you guys would like best, but I thought this one was really interesting, because here's a kid, Pete, who didn't even have a team on Saturday. And then Saturday, he gets the call. And so Let's listen and
This has got to
watch.
be an NFL first. I have literally never seen this before. The Falcons beat the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. As usual, NBC held their on-field player interviews after the game. One of the players was new Falcons kicker Parker Romo. If you were unaware, just this week, the Falcons benched their longtime kicker Young-Ho Koo, signing Romo just for Sunday's game. And when I tell you he was new to the team, he literally found out he was making the trip to Minnesota just 24 hours before the game. Bro didn't even get a chance to introduce himself to all his teammates by game time. And I'm literally not kidding, because after he goes 5 for 5 in field goals, NBC obviously wanted to talk to him about his performance. And what you're about to see can only be explained on video.
You found out yesterday morning that you were making this trip, and I know you're learning your teammates' names. You know their names, right?
I know Bijan.
This is Leonard
He doesn't
Floyd
even know
over here. You guys
one of the best defensive ends.
Now think about how wild that is. There are 53 men on an NFL team. Bro got quizzed about only 2 of them and got 1 wrong, which means if they brought the entire team out on the field, he wouldn't know 26 of his teammates. So to recap, Bro learns he's playing in this game a day before. He goes 5 for 5 in field goals, winning the Falcons the game, and at the same time, he barely knows anyone he just played with. I've literally never seen anything like this before.
That kid's hair distracts me, John. He's got so much of it. I got nothing.
Oh, yeah.
I wish he would share the wealth, man. Well, you know, what the hell? All right, John.
How about this? How bad was their kicker that they basically said, out, and got him bag and baggage, out. And then this guy, who I don't know if this guy was even in their training camp or if they just picked him up, saw him in the preseason kicking for somebody else or whatever, Pete. But maybe the coach just said, look, nobody can be as bad as this guy. Let's get that guy.
And the guy goes 5 for 5. I mean, that's pretty daggone impressive. That was great. I watched a big portion of that game. It was fun to watch, obviously, and interesting to see. All right. As far as some sports, John, why don't we jump into this? Who are some of the surprise quarterbacks this year? You're not surprised probably that Lamar Jackson's really, really good again. Goff, really, really good again. Matthew Stafford's looked great. Baker Mayfield's looked great. But I think Justin Herbert, a lot of guys have basically given up on him, right? I feel like that. A lot of people were like, oh, he's down there and he's not doing anything in L.A. Well, they're 2-0 and he's doing pretty well actually right now, John. Then you've got Mac Jones at San Francisco, had to jump in. Obviously, they had injury with Purdy, so great for him. He did really, really well, by the way. And Daniel Jones at Indianapolis, they're 2-0. And the guy Indiana Jones looks pretty damn good, right? So not so bad. And I'd even say this, because he's had ups and downs. His rookie year and then all of a sudden over time and everything. But Jordan Love has looked pretty damn good early on for the Green Bay Packers too, John. So I figured I'd say this. So you've got those surprises out there. Herbert, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Lamar Jackson, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Jared Goff, 80% completion with 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. Those 3 guys have really, really started off the season pretty damn good. You know, Jared Goff never gets as not much credit as I think he deserves, John, but I think people are starting to realize that maybe this kid is really deserving of being that first pick in the draft that he was to the Rams not too many years ago. So I think that part's pretty interesting. What do you think? Is there a quarterback did I miss any of the quarterbacks, or is there something that you like? What I love about Herbert is this. He's got the right coach who likes to run the ball. He's got a monster offensive line, and that makes Herbert that much better of a quarterback, because if you got that running game, you can obviously throw the football. And I think that's what's helping Herbert right now underneath Harbaugh as his coach.
He's for sure a top 10, Pete, quarterback. Yep. Some people might have him higher than I'd have him, but I'd have him in the top 10. I think it's Josh Allen. I would say Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Yeah, Jalen Hurts. Joe Burrow would be right there, tied with Hurts in my mind, Pete, because I think those are the premier quarterbacks. And, C.J. Stroud hasn't looked bad, Pete, for this being his 3rd year. Obviously, he lit him up in his first year and then at least the team had a slump in the 2nd year. But, Joe Burrow, what else does Cincinnati have other than that they signed, spent all their money on a couple receivers, Pete? They couldn't keep some of their other good players because they paid so much for these guys. But Burrow, he'd be a top 10 quarterback. And believe it or not, who I'm surprised looks as good as he looks, at least to me, Pete, is Dak Prescott. I know I'd get crap for saying it, but again, we talked yesterday about the Giants and how Russell Wilson drove up and down the field, but then that idiot kept getting personal foul after personal foul. And the guy they brought in to replace him, personal foul. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with the Giants, but I do think that Dak looked pretty good in that game.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, John. I mean, he got paid for the right reasons. He's put up some really good numbers over the years. They just got to get over the hump, and they haven't been able to get over the hump. And maybe this is their year. Who knows? As far as college football, I just wanted to throw this one out at you. I think there's a couple of teams, 3 teams that I pulled out. And maybe there's somebody out there that you would say, you know what, you might have missed this one, but USC. How many people realize that USC is 3-0? They used to be one of those premier schools, right? They don't get talked about very much. I know, because part of the reason is they're in the Big Ten and they're having to compete with Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and all the rest, including Oregon, Washington. But there's 3-0, John. They've got a quarterback who's really started off the year in an incredible way. 69% passing, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's how you move the ball up and down the field. When you've got a guy like that who keeps the ball off the ground and gets it to the right guys in the right uniforms, he's done a really, really good job so far. I think Iowa State also has a quarterback that nobody's heard about. It's like Brock Purdy. Nobody really followed Brock Purdy at Iowa State. Iowa State is ranked, John. They're number 12. People don't realize that, I don't think. So they're the Big 12. Their team is number 12. They beat Kansas State already. They beat Iowa already. And then they had a podunk couple of games that they had, but they've got a quarterback who's pretty damn good too, John. He's got 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. But Texas Tech, they don't get talked about very much at all because of the fact that, all they do is throw the ball. Well, they got a quarterback this year who's throwing the ball pretty well, 11 touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a really good year last year as well. This guy, Baron Morton, ought to have some sort of a spot on this Heisman look, at least early on. Now, I grant you, they're playing nobody. But as they get into the season and this kid keeps on chucking the ball, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. By the way, they've outscored their opponents, John, 174-35. I think that these guys know something about putting points on the board. So 3-0, not a bad start for Texas Tech.
And as you already said, months ago, Pete, their big alumna was putting up, basically opened up his wallet. The billionaire alumni basically said, yep, whatever you need, Texas Tech. And awesome. That NIL money does make a difference. Yeah. I'll throw out a couple to you, Pete. You already mentioned Utah last week, so I'll say they're still 3-0. They're good. Yeah. The surprise ones to me are Auburn and Missouri that are 3-0. That's pretty dang impressive. Indiana, we kind of expected them to build on a little bit of last year's momentum, but Vanderbilt 3-0 as well. Ole Miss is 3-0, and they've got one of the best recruiters and best coaches in college football. So nobody, Pete, wants to play Ole Miss, in my opinion, especially in Mississippi. That's just, that's one of those games where, just like going into the Horseshoe at Ohio State or the Big House in Michigan, you don't want to go in there. But this year, Michigan at least is 2-1 right now after that upsetting loss to Oklahoma. But those would be mine, Pete. Missouri, as well as Auburn. Those would be 2 of my primaries right now.
And I think people forget about Missouri, who had a great year last year in the SEC, for the people who don't realize where they are. And I'll tell you what, John, how about Illinois? I know we've talked about this before, but it's worth talking about Belima and what he's been able to do and how he's doing it. They got a great quarterback. He's got a bunch of beasts on the defensive side too, John. I mean, those guys are good. They were 10-3 last year. I think they're going to be on their way to 10-3 again this year. They got a big one, I think, this weekend. I think it's Illinois, Indiana. So that ought to be pretty interesting as well, because obviously you're going to have a loser somewhere there. And those two teams have played really well coached as well. So should be kind of fun in the Big Ten to watch that game.
All right. Well, you only have to listen to this pitch one more time, folks, and that'll be tomorrow. But the pitch is, if you can, you should grab a virtual pass for Friday. Friday, Saturday, you get both days, everything that goes on stage for Rebel Boot Camp, the virtual pass, September 19th and 20th. So it's Friday, Triple Witching Day. You get to watch live Pete's reaction, my reaction, Grant Cardone's reaction to what's going on in the markets on Friday. And then Saturday, an awful lot of course, strategies like the one I just talked about with Pete on Rocket Lab and so forth. You get all of that, folks, if you get the virtual pass, and it does still include $200 credit towards any of the subscriptions we've got, any of the coaching, any of the mentoring, any of the subscriptions and education stuff, as well as merchandise that we've got on the site. So scan the QR code. I hope you can join us September 19th and 20th. And we'll be back at 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, and we'll have one more pitch for this, the virtual pass. Bang.